Hi, Alicia. It's great to see you.
Hey, happy to be here.
Thank you. We're on EM Psychotherapy, my YouTube channel, and we're just starting out. So we're winging it, trying different experiments. And you and I know each other through a mastermind group that,
We do
yeah.
almost a year.
Um,
August will be a year. It's crazy.
One thing we've discovered is that doesn't matter if you're in Florida, where you're based, or California, where I am, we have some of the same struggles. And so we're here to talk about that today and see what
Yep,
comes up.
I love it. I'm down.
All right. So I like to start. This is my second one. I'm starting right now with how do you feel the state of mental health is in your state in the United States right now?
So I am an LCSW and I graduated grad school in 2011. So I've been doing this for a minute and I've also lived in 5 states. So California is where I'm from. I did not practice anything there because I moved to grad school and started out all in New York. But New York, Louisiana, Kentucky, and Florida are the states I've lived and practiced mental health roles in. And I will say that I think every state and city has their own stuff and reasons why there are problems and things they do really well. But I think overall, the deficit that I see most clearly because it impacts people like me is that the middle class, if that's even a thing anymore, feels like it's really hard to access care sometimes, right? So in New York City, and at least if you were on Medicaid, you had really quality access to a lot of awesome providers, and it has its problems in its own right, but people could get therapy for free. People could show up here. People could do that. If you were wealthy enough to just be able to do private pay and didn't really mind, then you also could get even different, better care. But there's this middle group of people, and this has been true of all the states I've lived in, where you have an insurance panel that pays their providers like shit. So nobody wants to take them anymore as an insurance provider. But then that same like middle income person can't afford $150, $200 a session. They need to use their insurance. And now there's way less providers, especially if you need something with a specialization. And it just is this trickle down effect where your teachers, your lawyers, your nurses are feeling really left out of being able to access good mental health care for themselves or their families because of the way that there's a monopoly of the insurance companies and how they're really not valuing or respecting their providers through what they're paying them. So I think it's very appropriate to not want to be paid just to be altruistic, but I see how much it hurts this very interesting middle group of people who can't get on like Medicaid where there's, I'm not saying those are the best providers either, but there's more access to things, or you can't just casually go to sessions every week for $200. I think that feels very true across the country. And there's a million different issues with mental health we could get into, but that's the one I think that hits closest to home for thinking of myself at different stages of life, wanting to go to therapy and feeling very limited of finding that access. Why I stay on a certain panel who I think pays me very disrespectfully. But to me, it feels a moral dilemma of abandoning a whole set of clients that wouldn't really be able to have my care if I didn't stay on it. So
I
it's
feel
tricky,
that.
but
Yeah,
it's real.
I
So
have this very conflicted view of services like because I know how much they pay their providers, which you want to talk about disrespectful. You're destroying an industry because if that's your rate, nobody can
what are we
afford
doing?
to go to
Yeah,
grad. You're just going to eliminate this entire field. At the same time, that middle class of people, they
we need
can't
care.
afford
Yeah,
to in California, the rate's like around $300 an hour. You can't afford that. And so I love that they give you this option. They make it really flexible. They make it easy to access, which to your point, it's so hard. And yet
yeah,
I know the back end system of it. So I get conflicted. I want these people to have access. I don't want to destroy a whole field.
right.
What do you do? Every therapist I know has this internal battle of what to do about that very question.
And I
Want
think
to
a lot
offer
of,
services, but not wanting to be like on the streets.
at least for social work schools, what I can speak to, they really taught you this very unhelpful belief that you're supposed to help people. Like, it's fine. You're not that, your value in money, that's messy. You're just helping. That's the gift, right? I remember this first job I had. It was this large not-for-profit in New York, one of the biggest in the country for crime victims. And they made money. They're not-for-profit, but they made money. I was making like I don't even know how I lived in New York and made the money. I was like pennies. And I got promoted. I was brave and I was still in my 20s and it was my first big job. So I was like, I'm going to ask for a raise, nothing crazy. And they were like, yeah, we definitely can't do that. And then they gave me a Yeti water bottle the next day. I was like, but we really see you and appreciate you. And it was so offensive. Like a
I
water bottle,
remember a painted rock was my gift for a
right?
year worth of service.
I'm killing myself over here in your unhealthy work environment on top of everything else and my low salary. That I have to have two jobs. I worked 7 days a week. I worked at a bar, waitress, and I did that with kids, trauma kids. But I had a hustle. I wanted to live in the city. But yeah, it's this belief that I'm wrong or bad for wanting to make money and have a lifestyle and still do this profession because somehow they don't go together. But a basketball player or an actor who's demanding $3 million more to play a sport to entertain us or do something, make a movie, that's okay. That makes sense. But me asking for more money, God forbid, like what's wrong with you? It's just this messy value system that we have, I think.
Even the comparison you drew, I feel like is part of where that messiness comes in, because I think for a long time, our profession genuinely got some flack because it was basically people who didn't need the money. They were generationally wealthy, or they had a wealthy
Mhm.
husband or wife,
With
or like,
Debbie.
yeah, it was a hobby. Or even if it was your career, you were actually like this professor of psychology, or,
Mhm. Mhm.
and now that people are doing it as a career and they need to support themselves, we're not asking for $3 million. I'm asking for the minimum to afford a one-bedroom apartment in
Yeah.
the whichever. Like that is a low bar. And when there's this idea of asking to not live in poverty is then, oh, makes you greedy and bad. Again, it's the cycle of destroying the entire industry. Then more and more
Yeah.
people are like, no, thank you. I don't want this. Why should I choose this? And so then all these people talk about there's a dearth of mental health professionals. I'm like, yeah, because as a society, you've told us
We're
you
not
only
worth
get to do this for fun if you're already rich some
right.
other way.
Right.
Um, so I do think that's a big problem. And it would be easy to go down this hole. So I'm going to actually
Yes.
go to
Yes.
the next question
Yes.
so that start to turn this around a little bit, which is that's some of the problems. That's part of what you're seeing all over all the 5 states in various
Mm-hmm.
ways. But what gets you really but we're still here. Like
Yep.
you're 10
Still
years
doing
on, I'm
it.
7 years on. We're still in this field. We're still excited. So what makes you excited about being in this field?
I do think that there is a lot of innovation and passion in the work and research and shifts that's coming along. And I love that mental health is more talked about, it's less stigmatized, and we're understanding more of the nuances that not everything's just depression or just anxiety. There's all these layers and pieces and different ways to creatively engage in treatment as well. I think COVID really pushed our field to have to adapt more. It's not just come to my office, sit here, do this one thing, right? What if you play around with 90-minute sessions coupled with sound baths and other things? One of our other colleagues was saying that her private practice, this is something they're moving towards. Or what if it looks like the walk and talks in the park? Or what about exploring psychedelic drugs in therapy sessions and how that actually helps the brain for certain diagnoses and experiences? Or what about like how EMDR is having its moment and IFS and brain spotting? I just think it's so creative right now, and that we're understanding not everything just fits in this tight box, and we're blowing that up so that things can be more accessible, that we really can get to the root and help people. And it's okay if you step outside the lines. It's not as wrong or bad, or you're not shamed in the way that I think there was a snottiness about the profession before. And so I feel excited by that. And I feel like regardless of the problems, ultimately the people that come into this job genuinely really do care about people. And we find ways to still make it happen despite the obstacles we face in the professional side of it, insurance side, and whatever else side. But we still really care about our clients. And at the end of the day, we're going to show up for them in the best ways we can. And there's a lot of people doing that. So there's a larger safety net catching people. It doesn't have to just be me or just you. that collectively, I think we're really thinking about this and working together, which is really helpful. So,
Well, adding on to that, one of the things I've been really excited about, because I had this feeling in the back of my head, but you don't know how to talk about it. You don't like when you're in grad school, you're just starting to put some of the pieces together, which is this idea of should somebody really be in my office every week for the rest of their lives? Is that like I'm
a
building
bit.
up to? Because that's
Yeah.
like what's in the Woody Allen movies and this idea of this kind of like neurotic nasal gazing of I'm going to examine every piece for like
Mhm.
forever, right? And it all
Yep.
has the deep meaning and these subconscious desires. And look, I can go on a Jungian trip all day long. I love them. I love the archetypes, but it doesn't feel like it fits for a lot of people. And that excitement piece, like I love that all this new stuff that's cropping up that we're talking about and exploring, it's about saying, hey, let's not go to therapy for the rest of your life. Like we don't need to talk like that much.
Right.
Right?
Right.
A lot of it is about coming in and out. It's about healing this piece. It's about, hey, like maybe let's do a little bit here and then take a
Yeah.
break and then do a little bit
Yeah.
here and take a break. And I get really excited about how all these new opportunities are changing how we even think about going to therapy, which means more people are willing to heal some stuff. Because if you're signed up for the
100%.
rest of your life, you're
Exhausting. Yeah.
yes, I don't want to go see you every single week. I don't want to talk that much.
I don't want to think about myself that much. That
Exactly.
critically. Yeah.
Exactly. So the idea that like, hey, maybe I come for not 9 weeks or 12 weeks of EMDR therapy, or hey, maybe like we know somebody who's doing equine therapy, which I
Yeah.
love. I think is
Yeah.
amazing. It's getting a little bit more traction. And again, that's more of a 6 month modality, and then you're out the door.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like some of the just the exploration. So then if somebody does show up in my office for 4 or 5 years, I know they want to be there. I know this is what they need because there's all
Yeah.
these other options. So I think
Exactly.
there's this nice synergetic feedback of back and
Mhm.
forth. It's really,
Mhm.
I agree with you. It's very exciting.
Yeah. Feels invigorating too. Gives me energy. So.
Okay. So that's one of the positives,
Mhm.
but that also means that there's new worries to think about, right? There's new stuff coming on. Whenever there's new stuff, you have to start thinking about like, what are some of the risks?
Yes.
What do
Work in
you,
progress.
when you get excited, when you think about your own business and some of the stuff that you're putting out there, because you're exploring some new ideas too,
Mhm.
what are some of the things you worry about or try to be really thoughtful around?
So I did just start a second business a year ago in June for coaching. And back in the day, that used to be like a bad word. Therapists were like, oh, coaches, they don't know. And yes, coaching is not therapy. And I think like there are people like there are therapists who abuse their place of power and their skill set and shouldn't be in that role. There are coaches who do that too. But I think that to add on to just the diversity piece, it's been so helpful to know that there's another way I can use my skills and help people that maybe don't need therapy, that like all these different things exist. And I don't think I'm answering your question, but I'll get there in a second. But that's been exciting, I think, for like that piece. What worries me though is when you have a landscape that is so open right now, like coaching, that is not very regulated, or you have COVID that blew up therapy rules and regulations. And what worries me is that some professions aren't catching up. So now you have a client that moved and I can't see you anymore. And does that help? I think like the evolution is slow there. The evolution is too fast here. And then you have the social media where everyone's just throwing stuff on the internet and pretends that they're an expert on anything. And so vulnerable people need to be protected or scooped a little bit. And I think what worries me is sometimes like too much and too fast and too many choices. And it's hard to always know what's credible, what isn't, and how to weed out. Because all clients will be like, on TikTok, I saw this. Am I this? And I'm like, okay, no. And who said that? But then I have clients that are like, oh my God, I saw this thing on TikTok on attachments. It was so helpful and it was good. I'm like, that's great. So again, it's that yin and yang pros and cons of growth and information, which is beyond just the mental health scope of like how that hurts and helps. So for me, I just try to really make sure I'm doing everything as ethically and aligned with what I think is what I believe to values and how to move forward while navigating these two really interesting fields that one has really strict rules and one doesn't, and they don't always like each other, but I think there's a place for all of it. So it's just how to help people make sure they're getting good information and how they can be their own good advocate and assessor to understand what they're taking in and not just believe everything and not just throw spaghetti at the walls and try all the things that maybe you don't really need. Like really being thoughtful about the care and the interventions you're investing in to make sure they're good for you.
A little bit of a side question, but I think it's really important. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
about you, but on my Instagram, it's like somehow figured out that I'm a therapist. And I get shown there's an insane amount of social media that's posting stuff about mental health. And we do have this background and we do have this training, and we're also people. So I've gotten sucked into my own, oh, this maybe
Oh
isn't the
yeah.
best content, but oh, is it seductive to watch? What how do you apply your critical thinking skills when you get thrown up social media that's giving you all these different mental health messages,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to filter through it? Like, how do you do it?
I think for me, I'm very picky about what accounts I do follow. And I try to be self-aware enough to notice if I'm like going down a rabbit hole that doesn't feel like it's like helping me. This is not just about like being a time suck or something, but if I'm getting fired up or I'm having feelings or then I'm like, what am I engaging with here? Is this necessary? And I think it's like the minute I see something that if it really doesn't align or I'm like, that's really unethical or that's really wrong, then I'm just gonna not follow them. I think it's just like I'm not gonna change people. I'm not gonna fix everything. I'm also not like the right or wrong compass of what is or isn't. It's just if it's not like vibing with my energy or what I'm interested in, or it's like raising too many red flags, not to a reportable state, but just it's a very interesting perspective, like not for me. I'm just gonna move on, like not giving into the I'm gonna argue in their comment section or I'm gonna message them or I'm gonna watch the train wreck. That takes a lot of like self-awareness and self-control. But I found that if I don't do those things, even if it's about other topics or people, it's like not a helpful state to get into and it's not fixing anything. So I think it's just coming back to what do I believe? What do I think? What is helpful? Other opinions are great. Sometimes if it's conflicting, but like in a thought provoking way that's like making me better, I'm fine with it. It's not like the accounts have to just look like how I think. But if it's something that just doesn't feel right or good or whatever, then I'll move on.
When you said, hey, if I'm having feelings about it, that really resonated because I like having disparate opinions in my feed. I like getting
Mhm.
challenged on all those thoughts. But I find if I'm getting triggered, like I'm getting angry, I'm like, how could they say that?
Yeah.
I'm not engaging with that content. I'm not thinking critically about it. I'm
Yeah.
just getting activated and then annoyed all day. So I
Right.
agree. I kind of screen those people out. And I find that's actually really helpful because people who have different opinions than I do, I follow two different accounts where they don't agree. They don't think therapy is good for anybody. And like
Mm,
that's pretty different from what I believe, right?
yeah.
But they're so calm and thoughtful and they bring up points that I always end up thinking about it,
Yeah.
right? Versus getting angry about it. And
Which
for
is
me, that's my flag. Okay, if you make me think and you disagree, great. If you're
right.
making me angry, I'm not going to think about your content anyway.
No.
Let it
And
go.
we're not in this, I don't need to know this person. It's not a relationship I have to figure out. It's just not for me for whatever reason. And I'm fine with that because there's so much shit out there. Like not everything's for everybody, and that is fine. And I like that my clients ask, like when they come and ask me, I'm like happy they do because I can say, yes, keep listening to whoever that was, or like, absolutely not. Can we please check their citations or who they are? Or I just don't agree with that. Like you are not bipolar. You are
Oh my
not.
God. I
Like
feel like
you are
there's
just
some sort
not.
of
Like
bipolar whirlpool going on because so many people ask me about it and I will go through I'll be like, let's do a
right,
quick
I'll pull out the
assessment and
DSM.
we'll do it. And I'm like, yeah, you don't, that's
Right.
not bipolar.
This is why I'm saying you don't meet criteria. You can feel whatever you want to feel. You can put whatever label you want to put on yourself, but I'm not going to bill your insurance with this diagnosis because of these reasons. Like people have mood swings, people get whatever. Just check the facts next time you're watching so and so's channel. Maybe they don't do their research well. When it's something that big, like a mental health diagnosis, right? It's not just like what icing you should put on a red velvet cake, whatever. This is something bigger than that.
Flip side of that is I love how much people are talking about attachment. Like
so much. Yes.
People, when you start to understand attachment, you start to change how you relate in relationships, and everybody has an attachment style. So I
Yep.
actually love how much information is out there on that
Yeah.
specific. And some of it's
Mhm.
not fabulous, but every time somebody brings it in is, I want to talk about my attachment style. I'm like,
Yes.
beautiful. Let's do it. Let's bring
Do
it
that.
up. So we talked about what you're worried about, what you're excited about. What are you doing? What are some of the new things you're bringing to the table of mental health?
So in my therapy practice, I work a lot with folks going through adjustments, relationships, jobs, wanting babies, not wanting babies, marriages, etc. I also work with a large community of postpartum women, so postpartum diagnoses, infertility. So that's like my wheelhouse over in therapy, but I'd say my newest stuff is in my coaching side, and that I'm really working with women like 20s to 40s, really about reclaiming your your place in the driver's seat of your own life. These are generally women who probably have some higher education, have a pretty good job, maybe married, maybe not, maybe have some kids. Like life is pretty fine, but also it's not fine. How do we level up? How do you become more confident and feel that you really deserve to have your voice and take up space and have once and put yourself at the top of the list sometimes, if not all the time? And then on top of that, I'm also getting my Pilates teaching certification. I've been practicing for 12 years and I'm obsessed with Pilates, but finally felt like this would be a good time to enter into the other side of it, not just be a student. And Joseph Pilates is way ahead of his time because he is very 50% mind, 50% body. If one is not off, if one is off, like you're going to be a mess either way. Right. And I believe that so truly from the therapy piece. And so, not that everyone has to do Pilates, although everyone can and should, because it's a very great workout to have in your mix. But it's just like another entry point of how I want to and hope to keep integrating this mind body connection, but differently than how you might think of it, like how yoga does it or other kind of things. Like I'm learning so much about just how our posture, how much it impacts everything about our breath, like stuff that, and I'm not a big meditator. That stuff's hard for me. And I did a lot of trauma work and I know how important the breath is. And I was never the therapist that was like going to give you all the like grounding stuff. Cause to me, I'm like, oh, it's kind of boring. I don't love it. But now in this other space, I'm really, oh shit, like, no, this stuff is so actually important in a very different way. And I'm learning about it in a different way. It's not like from the mental health way. So I'm very excited of what I can do just to bring more awareness to how we're just like standing in the world, presenting in the world, and then what that infiltrates to them what we think about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel in our bodies. I'm just like pumped for all the very exciting things that I'm gonna be offering down the line once I'm officially certified to teach. But that's what's getting me pretty excited. And then even just elements of that I can definitely bring into my therapy work and have already since even starting this coaching hat, which is a different position, but it's an exciting one too. So I think that's where I'm living right now. It's in the still everything's still baking a bit, but we're almost there where it's going to be really like, okay, now things are just rolling out. So I'm excited about it. But
It
yeah.
sounds really exciting. It sounds like a lot of somatic work and just like you said, that mind body. So I see it in my clients every day. The pandemic really
Mhm.
highlighted it when I felt like my eyes were glued to the video, being like, what are their shoulders doing? What is their chest doing? What are their
Yeah.
cheekbones doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, just paying attention to that body language is such a key part of our job, and we don't even think about it that much. But
Right.
so many of us, like, we're just hyper focused on what is the body telling me right now. And so
Yep.
bringing it in with Pilates and the breath work sounds amazing and exciting.
Yes. And people like right now we're learning posture assessments and I'm having to do examples. So I don't have a lot of real life friends here in Miami. So I've asked my friends who live other places to send me photos because I can't. I'm just gonna go to strangers and be like, can I do a posture assessment? But it's crazy how many people have said yes because we all want to know more stuff about ourselves, right? We're very we're very vague on some level where I'm like, tell me about myself. How am I standing? What can I do
It's
different?
why we love those personality tests, even though
Yes.
they're completely debunked, they're not helpful.
But
And yet
I will take one every day. Like I want to know about me. So I love this idea too. It's such a nice entry to get the conversation going because who doesn't want to know something about themselves? Do I have good posture or not? Or what can I do better? So it's such a fun little easier way to get in to start something I think that can be really rich and beautiful for those who really want to take it to that next level. But that's also been really fun too. Of just like people like, yeah, are you gonna tell me? Are you gonna share your information with me? I'm like, of course. So it's like a fun exercise so far. And I'm just in the first weekend.
I definitely think the pandemic highlighted for me how much fun is important. Like, it's
Hmm.
funny to say that because, like, in therapy, we've had the hard sessions. We've had the,
Yeah.
okay, we're in the deep, dark
Yeah.
recesses of humanity. Let's stay here. Let's be present. Yeah. But since the pandemic, I really incorporated the idea of, you know what? Let's try to have like just a little bit of, no matter how dark we got, no matter how much we're
Great.
talking about bad people, like, let's leave a little room to have a little bit of fun, whether
Yeah.
it's in session or part of their homework or any of that. That feels really valuable, right? I don't know how you feel, but it sounds like that's true for you. Just having a little
Yes.
bit of fun.
Yeah. Always. And I like to keep it real. I'm probably way more uh casual. It's working for some personalities and it feels authentic to me. So I'm always down to keep it light or keep it real, keep it interesting. It doesn't have to be so serious. Right. That's not my style either. So
I think there's a lot of value in that. When your therapist is too stuffy and too taken aback, is it okay to share this?
yeah.
Is
Yeah.
it, like, are they a real person? Like, am I a
Yeah.
bad person because of X? And it's no,
Right.
I'm just a human
Right.
being. And like, I'm a human being too. Like, we all occasionally fart and let's just own it.
Exactly.
Be real.
Exactly. We've
Right?
all had to leave a session in the middle to run to the bathroom. It's happened. It is what it is. So
The amount of people who are embarrassed by that, and I'm like, I've done it too. Relax.
yes.
Our bodies
Yes.
don't care
I'd
that you're
rather
in all
that than
therapy.
you shit your pants or something. You know what I mean? Like, please go. It's fine.
Well, so you're offering a lot of great stuff, but some people aren't in Florida or can't afford it, as we were talking about at the beginning of the
Mhm.
session. So, what's a
Mhm.
resource you would recommend for people out there who are interested in what you're talking about, but maybe aren't ready to take the step or can't access what you're talking about? What would you recommend they try?
Yeah, I think there's always a way to hopefully find some therapist who is in network or in your price range or whatever else enough. So some really great credible sites to use to start researching folks would be Psychology Today, Zen Care, Alma. They all like certified, make sure everyone's checked, like officially a therapist. And it's like buying a house. Do your research, email 50 people, interview them like they're working for you. So I think really putting yourself in that empowerment place of there are options. People do fit those boxes, but you got to find the right person for you. So those could be some really great resources, insights. Another piece could just be even starting a dialogue with friends or family, talking about this with people that you trust. Like maybe they have some insight. Maybe they are also in the same place. Maybe they actually have somebody they go to you didn't know about, right? So just taking away some of the shame around it and starting to talk and feel empowered and connect because these are problems that everyone has. Like I've never had a client come to me with that they're the only one that's ever had that thing. Maybe the little details, but we've all had loss. We've all felt depressed. We've all had a breakup. We've all not known what to do. We've all had low self-esteem. Like it thing after thing. So talk to people looking for even groups of like-minded places, like joining a yoga studio if you're interested in trying to meet some people there. And what's the culture here? What's the vibe? Moving your body, joining a book club, things like that to just start to get to know other groups of people who might offer some of that support. And that's not a substitute for therapy, but sometimes there's like other communities and supports we can seek out that are more free or accessible that are like that stepping stone to getting us to the session. And there's a lot of great books out there. Don't have too many to say a few, but like looking for like self-help ish books, but there's some really good ones out there of like topics that you're interested in on your library app, etc. And diving in and reading more about some stuff, following some of those really well contented Instagrams, TikToks, etc., and really learning more. So then you have good questions or know your criteria when you're going into looking for therapists or
If people are in Florida or anywhere else you're practicing, where can they
things.
find you and how should they reach out?
So for therapy, I can see folks living in New York, Kentucky, Indiana, and Florida. And I am on Psychology Today probably be the easiest way. My name, Alisha Bowker. You can just type it in there. And I'm based in Florida on there, but I can see folks in any of those states. And then for coaching, you can be anywhere in the wide world. And for that, I have an Instagram, alicia.bowker.mudrock, or I have a website, alicia-bowker.mykajabi.com. And you can sign up for my newsletter. I send out stuff every week, once a week, of what I'm doing, just some like good insights, little videos and interviews. And then on my Instagram, I also have links to everything as well. So those would be the best places.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us and just winging it and seeing what happens today. That was really
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thanks for having me. What a great conversation.